Right then, I'm going to just put this field grey down just on the floor here. I've thinned it a little bit, but not too much. I don't care how long it takes for this to dry particularly, and we're just covering this one area, so you're only going to see it as you look down, and you know it's going to be pretty dark when you look down, but under my desk lamp you can absolutely see the floor. So when we've done the ivory white as well, it might just stand out a little bit more as well. So I'm not worried too much about the finish. I'm just slapping this down, to be honest. Just make sure we've got no gaps. We've gone right up to the edge there. It's a real shame that when Tamiya designed this kit, they designed it in a way that you couldn't possibly ever put internal detail in. I mean, I guess you could do a 3D printed thing and scale it all down, but I don't think this bulkhead's in the right position. I'm not fully sure. But you can't open the hatches and stuff, you know, they're all moulded in, so yeah. And the internal frame of this is all wrong as well, so you're on a hiding to nothing. I'm just going to go, you never know what you're going to see until you can see it, if that makes sense. So I always go a little bit beyond where you expect. You know, for things like this, I'm expecting we'll see a little area here, but at an angle, could I see just a fraction under there? I don't know, so we'll just go a little bit further. Got the paint out anyway. Right, that's that job done. So like I say, possibly should be a bit paler than that, really. It might become a bit paler as it dries, I don't know, but that's the floor of the tank done. Good to get these things right. It just helps the realism, you know. So okay, I've mixed some ivory. It's worked well with the dab of flat earth. So it's literally had the end of a paintbrush dab, sort of that sort of size. It's had about 4 of those into a good couple of loaded brushes worth of white. And then we put a little bit of white spirit in to thin it all out, and that's helped with the mixing process. So I've got something that looks a little bit sort of dirty white, off white. Quite happy with that, actually. So first thing I want to do is paint in this rim. And I need a very fine brush to do that, so I'm just going to get myself so that's a number 50 long bristle, so we'll use that. I'm going to put my magnifying glasses on and let's see if we can zoom you in while I do that. Let's get that out of the way for now. Yeah, there we go. So the trick is little and often. which again is something that's easier to do with enamel paints than with acrylics because of the acrylic drying times. So there we go, that's me going round once. So that's a little uneven. You can see where the paint's a little thinner in places. So I'm just going to thicken it up. And rubber black is my next colour. So we've got the tyres on the road wheels, return rollers to do. We've also got a couple of other bits as well. So the strap that holds down the jack block is rubber black. The hose that goes across, the ventilation hose that goes across the top of the tank, rubber black. And I'm sure there is something else. Oh yeah, the cushion on there. So we'll paint that rubber black first. Get that out of my way. Right, so I can see it down the bottom there. Get my tweezers. There we go. So I've already painted up the Panzer grey on it. So I can use this larger brush for this. There we go, that's going down okay. And then once we've painted this hose, I have no more need for this brush. We can clean the brush up and crack on with a thinner brush for doing the tyres, because we're going to need just a tad more control than this brush will give me. Right. So even though you think the underneath might not be visible, do it anyway. I've said this several times now in this build, you're always taken by surprise as to what can be seen. So, you know, don't be lazy, don't cut corners, do a good job. Right, happy with that. That's already starting to dry, so I'm going to put that to one side, clean my brush, and then we'll get on with the road wheels. So I'm going to start with the return rollers. Now, this particular return roller has a little tooth in it for seating the track. I'm still going to paint that black anyway, because it'll give you the illusion of a gap on the top and things like that. So the actual hub of this is countersunk, so we're going right up to that countersunk edge. So nice and carefully like that. Then we can paint the edges in and we're all good. Okay, so that's painted in one pass. We'll see what it looks like when it dries, but it's already looking like it's probably okay. I've also done the behind it. In theory you won't see it, but you know, you're going to have track over it and all of that sort of stuff, but you never know, you might just catch one edge. So just going over around the back, just make sure that you've not got any risk, basically. So that's one of those done. Let's have a look at one of these road wheels. So now here we're slightly different. So the tyre is recessed to the hub. So if I get that in shot for you, I'm just going to move my paint to the other side. So we've got it mounted on a cocktail stick. We're going to start by just going into that edge, and you can see that what I'm doing is I'm turning the cocktail stick, keeping the paintbrush steady. I also have my little finger pressing against my hand. That's also helping to steady my hand. I do have a hand rest, but then I have to hold the part higher up. So right now this is working for me. Okay, so that's the front surface done. Then we can, same approach, we just brush in the top, move the wheel around a little bit. We're not really moving the brush, but we are doing brush strokes. But when you look low down, you will see the bottom of these wheels. So absolutely need to not cut the corners. So same process. I have definitely got a hair on this, a bristle that's longer than the rest. And you'd be surprised how much problem that is causing me. Let me just deal with that. I need to cut that off. There we go. I think that is dealt with. Just one bristle is enough to make a messy paint job. So what I do is I get the brush close to the edge, and then if I'm too far out, I go back around it if I need to. Okay. I'll check I got right up to the edge on all of these. Okay, so that's our first wheel done. Right, we've also got to paint this little strap in as well, and this is typical of Tamiya. They do this all the time, and it's awful. We've got this great big step wedge here, and it shouldn't be like that, but so you then have this dilemma of, am I painting that whole thing black, or what am I doing? I'm going to make it look like the strap is just going over the top of it and it's part of the tank. I think that's my best view now. So I'm going to start with the inside of the strap area there. I think I need a little bit more thinner in this. I'm finding that after a little bit of time the thinner flashes off, or maybe I didn't quite get this as thin as I perhaps should have done in the first place. Let me just unload that brush. There we go. Now we still have to paint the block in the wood, so I'm not going to worry about getting it on the wood block. So you can see this time I've got my hand lying flat, and then the hand that I'm holding the brush with is resting on it, and that's going to help steady my hand. So I'm always looking at how do I steady my hand. And then we're just going to bring that down the top surface and try not to get any paint on the sides. There you go, I think you can see that. Okay, I think I'm happy with that. Okay, right, so I'll carry on, do the rest of this off camera. I don't think there's anything I'm doing you've not seen now in terms of painting the black, so I'm going to crack on. Well, all my rubber black is painted, and I next wanted to turn my attention to the inside of these lamps. And I don't know whether I've ordered wrong or what, but I mean, X11 is what we're supposed to be using in there. I've only got XF11, which is a very different colour. So yeah, I'm going to use a marker pen for this. So this is the Gallery aluminium, but it's actually quite a light aluminium. I just need a little bit of tissue to tidy that up. I've just because it's a real paint pen, you have to activate it by pushing the nib in a few times, which I've just done. So there we go, that's that one done. That one done, so we'll let those dry. I'll keep it upended while it dries, just to prevent any drips, because unlike some paint markers, these actually have painting. So yeah, that should be sufficient, and we can touch up the edges with the blue later on, when we inevitably will do some dry brushing after we've done some weathering. So that's our lamp lenses done. Most things are painted now. I've got a small bunch of things left to do that need the detail painting, includes that as well. So yeah, everything else is painted in its base colours at this time. Other than the figure, obviously, we've still got some base colours to do on that. So I'm going to just start working through these. We'll pick the first item that comes up on the instructions, and then see what else is in that same colour. Here's the basic way I'll work. So tracks we're leaving for now. That pretty much all done. Right, here we go. So we've got 56 being used for some bits and pieces. Where's my 56? There it is. So that's metallic grey. For the starter handle, the S hooks, and also the axe. So if we get the hatchet, S-hook, start handle, we know they're 56. Let's see what else. Shovel tip, 56. Exhaust we've done. Oh, the bolt cutter head is 56. The two rods are 56. So it looks like 56 is going to cover off a lot of this. Steel cable is 56. Right, now I think I want to go a different route with the, just trying to find it. I think they do it the body colour. Where is it? The fire extinguisher here. Where is it? Well, I can't find the fire extinguisher. Right, there it is. Yeah, so fire extinguisher is installed as body colour. I want to show it slightly differently, so I'm going to do body colour, but we're going to add a splodge of black, or maybe a splodge of white, just to give it a bit of contrast. So it looks like, yeah, it's the same colour, but it's from a different batch, painted in a different factory, from a different manufacturer. It's going to look different. It's not going to be exactly the same. So that's what I want to do with that. And then with the aerial, when we mount that, again, they're showing that as normal colour. I'm going to do it black, I think, just for devilment. But it looks like 56 is going to cover off all but those three parts. So that's what we're going to do. 56 next. We've not used this one yet. So this is a metallic. We have used a metallic before. Or we might have used it on the exhaust when we mixed colours, possibly. But yeah, so gonna get all these painted up. That'll finish some parts, but not all of them, because we've got wood handles to do. Obviously, it's a paper handle. I know everyone thinks it's like linoleum or something like that. It's not. It's a layered paper, laminated and glued, and it's a red-brown colour, but it's paper. Yeah, interesting. So yeah, and then we'll have the wood parts to do separately. So as I look at this, do I want to do the wood parts first? No, they're lower down, so that makes sense to do them second. So 56 it is. Let's get going. So no change in the colour here. We're just going with what Tamiya are recommending out of their range of paints, with a little bit of added thinner. What I like about these enamels is you can just keep working them. I mean, that's one of the reasons I like enamels, because they are ready to go, whether you are airbrushing, brush painting, whatever your plan is, they're up for it. You couldn't do what I'm doing now with a Tamiya acrylic paint. It wouldn't take that constant rebrushing. And I'll make sure we've got the sides done as well. And though it's not necessary, I will do the underside. I won't worry too much about it, but again, just in case there is the slightest little bit of visibility, we've covered it off. Now, some of this metal will be painting back over when we do the wood, but that's fine. I can control that nicely. There we go, and that's, you know, you can see that's matted down, that's already dried. So that's okay for a first coat, I think. So on the steel cable, obviously when we come to this, we'll do some weathering and pop that detail out. But yeah, so I'm going to paint the underside first, because that's, and you'll notice we're not priming these parts, it's just not necessary with enamels, and the Tamiya enamels have proved their ability on that. So yeah, okay, I can mount it in its stand. So we paint the underside first, get all these details painted in, just doing the whole thing in one colour for now, and then we'll have a look at changing that up a little bit. When you use just one block colour, that's what makes it feel a little bit more toy-like and a little bit less realistic, because, you know, this bit here, it would be a different colour, a different sheen, whatever it is. It's a different material, so, you know, it's not wire rope, it's probably aluminium or something like that. So let's do a different colour, let's make it look different. So that is the rope underside done, and we'll just go along the side. And all the little marks you could see in the plastic where we've sanded down the sprue gates and things, they're all disappearing now, so that's great. So yeah, happy with that. We'll leave that to dry, and then we can look at doing some different metallics just to raise it up a notch. So I've just got to paint this in now in the Panzer grey. So even though this is an internal surface, because it folds forward and it's exposed, it would make it a huge target if it was white. So I'm just going to brush paint this in. I've quite heavily thinned this, so I am expecting to have to do 2 coats, but it just means it goes down nice and evenly and self-levels and all that good stuff. And then what I'm going to do is I think I'm going to lighten the paint a little bit for the fire extinguisher. But I've got a little bit of touch up to do. So where we did the paint pen for the lenses of the lamps. We just need to go around the rim, the outside rim of the lamp, and tidy that up a little bit. There we go. That's the fire extinguisher. You can see that it's lighter than the grey on the tank, which is what you can see there on that end. So when we put it on our tank, it should nicely stand out as a separate item, and I think that just adds to the authenticity of it. Even if the process of having a lighter colour isn't authentic, it does give you that more authentic feel. So sometimes a little artistic license just to hammer home the realism. So that's me done. I can clean these paints up. Everything has been painted with the exception of the wood handles, so I've just got that to do, and we'll do that in a second when I've cleaned my brushes up. So I've just painted in the wood handles, flat earth, and the jack block flat earth. Gotta say, as a wood colour, it's pretty rubbish really. If I was doing this not just with only the paints, the enamel paints, I'd be using a different colour, a lighter colour, and then maybe giving it a wash to, you know. But as that stands, that's how Tamiya want you to do it. I think the colour's too dark. I just don't think it's a good colour. They need a proper wood colour in their range, really. Right, so the only thing left to put some paint on now is the handle of the bolt cutters, which is red brown 64, and at the same time we can also do the handles of the machine guns in the turret, which are the same, I think, if my memory serves. So I will check that out and then I will come back to you. So Tamiya's idea of red brown is nowhere near the colour that the handles of the bolt cutters should be. It's almost a pinky red colour, and this is just a sort of chocolate brown colour, so it's not even remotely where I want it to be. So I'm going to add some red, so I'm going to mix the red up, then we're going to put some red in the palette, and we're going to add the brown to the red until we get the right consistency, because I'm just, you know, I'm not going to compromise on that. It's just wrong. Well, I'm not sure we'll get the colour that we're looking for, but I'm going to do my damnedest. It's a very strange colour. It's like a pale red wine colour. Actually, that's not too far off it. A little darker, I think. A bit more brown. There we go. That's much more like the colour that we should be having. There we go. Just darken it a little more. There we go. So that is the sort of colour the handles should be. So that was, I'd say 50-50, 64 and 7. So let's see how this goes onto our little handles here. Get that out of shot for us. So when we paint the handles, the handle goes up to and includes this little raised bit here. I did do a video on painting these probably about 18 months, 2 years ago. It was when we were doing the Tiger one, and I went through what the colours should actually be on this. Now I might have this slightly more red than it should be, but it's a lot better than what Tamiya was going to have us do. and these are displayed side on the tank, so you get a good view all the way around this and make sure it is painted in all the way around. Okay, just going to check around it, make sure that I've not missed anything and that we're nice and neat. There we go, I think that's done. All we need to do now is let that dry. And then we need to put some black in because we've got plastic where we should have a gap in the bolt cutters, but they look considerably better now with the right coloured handles on. Right, that is everything base painted, block painted, whatever terminology you want to use. So all the details are painted up now, so now we're down to sort of weathering. So clear coating will be the next job before we do any weathering. So I'm going to want to put the decals on before that, so my clear coat that's going to go on will be a gloss, and then and that'll be an acrylic gloss that'll allow us to put our decals on. It will allow us to put more enamels on top in terms of weathering as well, but we will seal once we've got the decals on, we will seal everything in matte. So that includes putting decals on the figures, so I need to do the flesh and paint the face in before we do any matting down on that. So still a little bit of work to do before we can clear coat, but that's sort of where I'm up to. Okay, I've decided the next step on the figure is to just give everything a matte coat. That's going to seal everything in and protect it before we paint the face in. So I'm using a Vallejo matte varnish. I haven't thinned it, it's straight out of the bottle. There's no need to thin this really. If you do want to thin it, you can add a little bit of water. And we can do the gloves as well as the uniform. And even though this will be resting, it's worth doing it because there's always that line between where you did and where you didn't, and then you suddenly realise you can see it and you got to go back and do it, and well, you just don't need to be there. We can do the shirt and tie as well. And you can see I'm moving the brush slowly and quite deliberately. I'm absolutely doing my hardest efforts to make sure we get no bubbles. Now, Vallejo is quite a forgiving product and the bubbles will generally disappear, but if you have got bubbles, just blow on it and they go away. I didn't have any bubbles as it happened. Okay, let's do his beret. Now we can turn around and go to the back of this guy now. underneath the beret. Well, I've carelessly got some on the pistol, but we'll give that a satin coat anyway. Although I'm trying not to get it on the belt, I do intend to just paint in with a satin varnish the belt and holster anyhow. And if I hadn't intended to, I've absolutely got to do it now. Okay, that looks good to me. So that can go to one side. Now, whilst I've got the varnish out, I might as well do the underside of this ahead of weathering. There's no need to airbrush this. Obviously, if you do airbrush it, you can. I am going to do a gloss coat on this because we've got decals and things to go on, and the turret, and I will be airbrushing that. But this doesn't really need it, so we'll just brush paint that on. And that's gonna, this is an acrylic varnish, so that's gonna allow us to put more enamels on top. Okay. Just make sure there's no drips, it's nice and even. Okay, that's looking okay. Got a little bit of excess build-up in places, so just by going back over it with the brush, we can take some of that out. Okay. Think that will do it. Just checking we've not missed anything. It's already starting to dry. So I'll go back to this other side that we first did. Yeah, it's largely dry. It's also slightly deepening the colour, which is great. Okay, so I'm going to leave that to dry. The underneath part of this, before we put the wheels on, we'll get some fairly heavy weathering. What we're not going to do though is brush paint the top of this, so we need to get the airbrush out for that.
Well, it's been over a week since I clear coated this, so my clear coat is definitely dry and ready to go. There's actually quite a lot of components to add to this, and what I want to do now is weather them so I can put those on, and then we can get to the track. So we've got all the wheels to go on, the suspension bits, drive and idle sprockets, and these little bars that go across the front and keep everything tensioned and what have you. But I want to stick to the principle of using just the paints, the enamel paints that we've used. So we've put enamel paint down, we've put an acrylic clear coat, so we now want to do some weathering on this and make it look a little bit mucky. Now the weathering on this tank, because it's sort of mid to late 39, is not going to be overly heavy. It's going to be a well-maintained vehicle that's perhaps got a bit muddy or road dust or whatever from, you know, being in operation. So the three colours I've got out of my colours available to me are flat earth, field grey, flat white. What I'm thinking is flat earth, maybe add a little bit of a green tint to it, and then maybe we can add a little bit of white and have two different tones that we can put on this. So my way of working is going to be to sort of use a dry brush for this, dab it in the paint, and then using a cocktail stick we can flick the paint on, so that very fine bristles on this, so we should get some fine blobs of paint. Then once we've done that initial bit on the sides and the underneath there, we can put on our wheels, and we can do them as well as we build it all up. Then that can go to one side, and we can look at building up the top of the tank and putting the decals on and so on, while the enamel paints are drying, and then I can get to painting the tracks. So yeah, that's where we're up to. I've also got to do some more work on the sidewalk as well. So yeah, we need to get some grey paint down on this. So we've got the dark grey and we've got the German grey. The German grey is going to be too similar, so I'm going to go with the dark grey and add white and maybe even a little bit of flat earth into it to give me some grey stone-like type colour for the cobbles. And we're gonna dry brush the cobbles for speed. So that's this bit here and all of these bits here. Dry brush it for speed, and then we're going to go over some of them with slightly different colours so we get a little bit of variation. The tank is going to cover much of this, but there's a surprising amount of cobbles that still be visible. So okay, with that said, let's get on with doing this. It's quite a messy job, so we need to put a little bit of protection down. Right, I'm going to get a palette, we'll start mixing some paint and see where we end up. Okay, I don't want the bog standard earth brown, so I'm going to start by putting a bit of green in there, see if we can make it look a little bit more sort of, I don't know what I'm looking for. There we go. I'm not even going to mix it too much, don't mind it being streaky. And then I'm going to put a bit of white in. There we go. That looks a bit more like what I was looking for. So what we're going to do now is do a little bit of flicking and get some weathering done on the main underbody of this tank. So to do that, very simply, let me get that out of the way. I'm going to dab my dry brushing brush in there. do the underside because it's easier on camera, and then we're going to flick it and what we're getting is slowly getting a build-up of subtle drops of paint. And we can even do sort of dabs. I can drag it, make it look like it's brushed along raised areas on the ground, so on and so forth. So I'm going to do that and then I'll come back to you. So some of the details on the inside I'm just dry brushing, so that there's a little bit of, just in case it gets visibly seen, it's all keyed in. I don't expect to see this, but it's just good practice. And the same with the insides of these. So you know, we're going to mount the wheels on that bit, but you know, let's just dry brush them in the same colour as we're using for the weathering, just for completeness. Again, much of this we won't see, but it's there and it just adds a little bit of realism to the whole thing. So I can now start to glue some of these bits of wheel and stuff in. So I'm starting with the return rollers, so we can get those on, let them start to dry. Now I've dry brushed the insides of the idler wheels, the drive sprocket, so these can also go on now. And we can paint the outside before we put the tracks on, with weathering stuff. So we can also put this idler wheel on. There we go. That's looking good, I think. Okay, so what I'm doing with these is I'm painting them and then I'm going to glue them on, and then later we can put the wheels on. There is a wheel that we can put on which isn't in one of those sets, so I've just got to find that. So it's one with a cap on like so, and that should go on there. So there is a little bit of play in that, so we're going to have to be careful with that. There's a little bit of play in all of these parts really. Okay. So that's starting to look quite good. I'm actually looking at the instructions, you have to build these up, so we're going to do the weathering on those and the wheels before we sandwich them together. So yeah, I'll get on with that. So all we're doing is dry brushing them so that we can cover them fairly quickly. With the wheels and the suspension arms all dry brushed, I can now assemble those. So I'm not gluing the wheels into place, we can keep them free turning. and then they'll get sandwiched together by the other part, which will get glued in. Okay. Now it doesn't really matter to me whether these wheels end up being glued into place or not. What's important to me is that they fit together well. Obviously with link and link tracks you're not going to be driving it along, are you? So there we go. So that's the first one sandwiched together. So I'll give that a moment to dry. So I'm going to build the others up and then we can assemble onto the side of the tank. So these are keyed, so you can't put them in facing the wrong way. They are a little tricky because it's quite a small slot that they are fitting into, but once you've got it lined up it should just slide on, he says. Well, that one's nearly through, so that was a bit tight, that one. I don't want to break it, but yeah, that's through. There might be a little bit of paint on it maybe. There we go. Make sure that's in the place correctly. Yep, that looks good. And then we can just give that a bit of glue from the back on the shaft there. So that's the wheels on our side. Now before we put the tracks on, obviously we want to just do some dry brushing and key everything in. That clearly didn't glue into place, so we'll have to re-glue that. So you see I'm doing both, dragging across to highlight and then dabbing to get some muck in. There we go. Right, I'm just going to put a bit more glue in that. So I'm going to do that on the other side. We've got this to put on as well. So I think that goes on those two protrusions there, like so. So let's get them glued in as well. And then there we go, that's all tied in nicely. I think that looks okay. Actually, on reflection, not gluing that in is the right thing to do because we might need to align it with the track. In fact, we will do so. That was a silly thing of me to do, to try and glue it in. Everything else, however, gets glued in. So I'm going to do the other side off camera.